So Trump outlined there his initial policies for America. He did not get into taxation over time, many things that people did want to hear about. But the recap for those of you who may just be joining the stream. Day one, he is signing, he says, an executive order for his Liberation Day campaign. Liberation Day campaign is the order of agenda priorities as follows. He's going to deploy the United States military to the border after declaring a crisis, a crisis at the border. This gives him full authorization to do so. He's ending the catch and release policies, and he's going to authorize the capture of thousands upon thousands of illegals who are here and deport them immediately. The second part of his plan for this is to authorize the United States government to create a new criteria, or I don't know if this is an existing criteria, I'll look it up later, but to consider all drug cartels to now be terrorists. They are now going to be considered terrorist operatives and enemies of the state because they're terrorists. As terror cells, this will authorize, I believe, the United States government to essentially go in, regardless of it being on international soil or not, and do something about this. So I think that gives them additional powers to deal with the cartels and the fentanyl epidemic, which is coming in from them. So that was one of the keynote parts of his inaugural address, doing it via executive order, authorizing the United States military to repel what he called all invaders, meaning he is now allocating them as an invasion force, and the cartels as terrorist operatives, and the illegals here as invaders who need to be expelled. He also says that any of the asylum seekers who are coming in, he's going to reinstate the Mexican side policy that they have to stay on that side of the border. They are not allowed to stay on this side of the border. This is something that people have been demanding for years, decades, in fact. Since I was a kid, this has been the demand, especially by people who are on the southern border, who have been dealing with this, who feel as though they're being terrorized. They feel as though they are being terrorized completely and utterly, because they are. Because they absolutely are. So this mandate authorizes him to send the military in to do something about that. Now, this is not the first time the National Guard has been deployed to the southern border. They have been used there multiple times. However, he did not actually make clear if he was going to send in Guard troops, which is usually something the state does, or if he's going to send in the actual U.S. Army. Like, we don't actually know yet how that's going to go, but definitely he is securing the southern border as a top priority, and he is going to massively deport. He's also stopping catch and release. So, like this, that for me is monumental, something that has been demanded forever. He went on to talk about his tariff policies. His tariff policies are going to go into effect. Obviously, we knew that was coming. Okay, we obviously knew that was coming, that we were going to be taxing tariffs pretty heavily. That's how Trump plans on raising revenue. But he also outlined his plan for revenue generation by instructing oil companies to begin the extraction of far more oil so that the United States can become a primary exporter. This has also been something which has been touted by Republicans for years as something which would make America a lot of money. We are very, very stingy with our oil, instead importing it rather than exporting it. And there's really no good reason for it except environmental fucking lunatics just don't want us to drill for oil. They just don't want us to. So that's been something that has been touted by economists and has been touted by many people who have looked at the revenue issue of the United States. When we have all this black gold under our feet, why the fuck aren't we using it? You know, makes no sense. Trump sent the Marine Corps before. I expect him to do it again. It wouldn't surprise me, but it seems that this is going to be Priority number one. He's also far more comfortable with the powers of office, having now had 8 years of dealing inside of this political arena. He seems like he is far better equipped to understand the ins and outs of how these policies need to be enacted or not. So via executive order, seems like he is not fucking around. So other policies that he outlined, he's making it a priority that we get to Mars. I don't give a shit about that. I don't even think it's slightly important, right? This is part of the Musk agenda. I don't care about going to Mars. I think it's the least important thing I can think of, in fact. But Trump has some infatuation with space. I don't understand. He had Space Force, all that. So he outlined that as well. Andrew, you forgot the part where he declared Jedi the enemies of the Republic. So he also, via executive order and official now United States policy, the new official United States policy is there are only 2 genders. That is the official policy going forward. That is what will be taught in schools. He also says that any of the DEI or any of the intersectionality, any of this stuff which is pushing another than nuclear family plan is going to immediately be eliminated from public curriculum. That is a huge deal. Out of everything he said, the idea of the start of a national campaign to glorify the nuclear family and vilify any configuration which is not that is a huge deal. It is a massive step in the right direction. So that is, out of everything he said, remember that the birth rate is the pivotal and pinnacle crisis, the existential crisis of the world. Whether you know it or not yet, it will be. You haven't felt the effects yet, but we're going to, and it's going to be really bad. Okay, we are feeling the effects, but just not as bad as what we will. Trump's trying to outline a plan here where he says we're going to glorify the nuclear family, everything nuclear family stands for, and vilify. Or even if he doesn't vilify, at least not promote anything which is not that. Right? Anything that is not that. That is the most important thing I think he said. Yes. Official United States policy, there's only 2 genders. Why is that important? Because when parts of the Democrat agenda for funneling money over to these groups, because official United States policy is this is the case, they will say, well, okay, you're asking for things which are incoherent. We have an official policy about this. We're not going to fund this in the military. We're not going to fund it outside the military, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, that was one of the most important things he said. So the 2 kind of key things here that are going to be perhaps really good is one, that point that I just stated with the glorification of the nuclear family and the idea of the official United States policy saying only 2 genders. Now, no genders, 2 sexes. They're using it interchangeably. I understand your idea for language here, right? And why we should use precise language. I'm just telling you, okay, that what he's saying here is the official United States policy, only 2 genders. That's it. Okay, that's a big deal. The second big thing, of course, that we're all excited about is to watch as he finally deploys the military in a massive fashion in order to repel what he calls invaders, allocation that now all drug cartels are terrorists, considered terrorists. And that's how United States policy going forward and from the Trump administration will now be dictated. This is also a big deal. It's a complete 180 degrees away from Joe Biden. The third thing, and this is key, was that he said no war. He wanted to be remembered as a president who brought peace, a president who negotiated deals, a president who stopped war, not a president who in any way, shape, or form contributed to one. That was his kind of promissory there. I think more than any other single reason that Trump got elected ultimately is because people did not want to get involved in these now foreign wars, which are perhaps going to engulf Europe due to the Ukraine-Russia thing, and perhaps the Middle East due to the Palestine-Israel conflict. People do not want the United States involved in those conflicts. They want those things brought to a speedy resolution so that we no longer have to fund them or worry about them. Trump's seeming promise here is that we are not going to do any war, nor any expansion to war, nor war period. Nor war period. No, none. So I think that that's a big deal. So those are kind of the three big ones. He did not touch on the exemption for overtime pay, but one thing he did say, he also didn't touch on the J6ers, but one thing he did say also that was very important was that veterans were going to get who left the military because they did not want to take the shot, the jabby stabby, will get full back pay and reinstatement if they so choose. So official United States policy is we made a mistake with this mandate. That's what he's saying. This was a mistaken mandate. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just trying to protect and serve. We had no right to actually tell you that you needed to do this, or we would throw you out. It obviously affected hundreds of thousands of lives in a very negative way, not just for the service members, but for their families and the extensions of their families, etc. So he's assuring them, not only are we going to correct this wrong by allowing you to get back in the service, but we're also going to give you full back pay to date. That is a big deal. That's also a big shift from official United States policy, which is, well, you do it because we own you, right?